down quite a bit. Senator Mike Serpoy. What time did you get done working last night?
I think we finally finished the last Senate bill, budget bill about 10 till 4.
Well, that's not bad. I mean, that's so you make 36 grand a year, and so if you work for 20 hours a day, that's almost $4 an hour, right?
Something like that, yes.
No, not bad work if you can get it. Good benefits though. Um, so let's jump right into this. First of all, I want to thank Miss Cindy from Franklin County for sending me this beautiful sign commemorating 125 years of Anheuser-Busch. It goes back 1876, so the 21. So they're like knocking on 150 years, and they've only had one woke year, and I don't think that went well. However, in solidarity, because if you're a Republican and I don't like you, I still listen to your songs. If you're a Democrat and I don't like you, I still watch Saturday Night Live. And if you're a woke beer and I like you and you're German, I still drink your beer. So normally, folks, there's water in here, but this week there is actually going to be a Bud Light in the Stein in solidarity with my friends. I'm sure everybody used to think Mike was a rhino. Now they'll think I'm a bigger rhino. It's like when you stand by me, you look skinnier. Now you look more Republican, you know. Um, so last night, budget comes up. It was kind of funny. So the House puts this amendment up, right, at the very last minute, and I've seen people. I think most folks, if I had to just guess, most folks just driving a truck today. Maybe they're listening to this. Maybe they're trying to. Maybe they work at a factory that they need to get to sleep, so they listen to this, so it'll put them out. They don't know what DEI is.
Right, I
But
agree.
if they did, they'd be like, I think most folks, well, if you need to do a little bit of that here and there, fine. But they don't want it to go overboard. And it probably has went overboard in some areas. The First Amendment said you couldn't do DEI even if you had a contract with the state. And I just kind of, it was a tension getting thing to run for Senate. Uh, but the House, being the House, always finds a way to screw that budget up and deliver it to you guys. They did it again this year. Half a decade. It's becoming, it's not just a trend anymore, it's a way of life. So you guys get the bigger hand in the budget. And you thought it'd be tough, but you thought, well, the Senate will come in and fix this mistake, and then maybe you pass a bill, right?
Hmm.
But a little bigger fight than folks thought, I think.
I was afraid it would be this way because this was a perfect Facebook fight. And that's the problem. When it came from the House, as you said, they had months and months to put. I think DEI is a real thing, and as Senator Lukemeyer said on the Senate floor last night, who, by the way, Tony did a wonderful job. He
That guy.
he
Wow.
talked about if we could get a statutory change for DEI, it would get 24 Republican votes without a doubt.
You'd vote for it, right?
Absolutely. But it's just like the transgender thing. You know, a year ago, a senator offered a poor amendment on a bill that was completely misplaced. It would have done nothing. We had no idea how it would affect intramural sports and things for the colleges that it would apply to.
Mhm.
And so we set that aside. And so for the past year, I've supported transgender sports by the people that call me a rhino. This is going to be the same thing. I think we'll do DEI next year, do it right. Because if we did it in the budget, it's just a 1 year thing. If we do it statutorily, it's forever until somebody changes it.
Guys, it's almost. I tell you, if Kelton, if we can call over there, it would be. Bill Eigel, your longtime close friend. I thought it was a respectful back and forth. But I think Tony Lukemeyer, that was the best floor performance I've ever seen from him.
Mhm.
It was just, I mean, every point he made it with a very cheerful, respectful, senatorial tone. He walked through all the reasons why
Mhm.
that DI he's opposed to it, how it can pass, why it shouldn't be done this way. I I, I really think even Bill Eigel was sitting there shaking his head a little bit. I would say he probably had no idea Tony was going to come with his best performance ever. And that guy, wow! I mean,
It was it was
everybody
it was
shocked.
it was impressive and is actually fact based and most importantly correct.
Well, it's not that Tony looked like he's good on the floor as an
Mhm.
attorney, but this was a performance that was just
It was,
top. I
it was
mean,
very organized and it pretty much told us why we did not need to do what they were trying to do. But of course, it doesn't matter. Facts don't matter many times.
well, I mean, I do think you've got of the Republicans, uh, all of whom I assume will vote for whatever you would come up
Mhm.
with schedule, even if you come up with something this year, right?
Right. No
Uh,
doubt about it. And it'll be done better and not as dangerous. The problem is on the budget, we just didn't know the impact, and we should have some idea of what something's going to do. We do a lot of things unintended with unintended consequences. We shouldn't do them on purpose.
what's the House's job to come up with stunts to get attention,
It
and
seems.
it's your job to tell them no, and
It's
that's how government works.
It was, and as I told the representative that offered that amendment, he is on two subcommittees for the appropriations and for budget. He's on the main budget committee. Nothing during the process where department heads and vendors could come in and say why this is a good idea, why this is a bad idea. The thing that came out of the House truly said we could not do business with companies that have a DEI policy, which means we can't pay our light bill, we can't pay our phone bill in the Capitol because CenturyLink has a DEI policy, Ameren has a DEI policy. It was horrible. And then well, we got new language now. We should have got that new language back in February and let people look at it and people weigh in. That's how this process is supposed to work. We're spending $50 billion and we're throwing stuff at a wall, hoping it sticks. That is insane.
You know, I'm obviously a terrible Republican anymore. I'm a dinosaur. I thought the goal of being a Republican was to get the government to leave you alone. Instead, now the government, if you're a Republican, wants to tell your company what to do. Look, if you want to have a DEI policy and it makes you money somehow, I just don't see how it's anybody's business.
It's a sticky wicket ever since COVID came along, and then we started telling the companies what they can do about the healthcare and things like that. It's a really a kind of a confusing time for some of these policies because we have historically been a company, a party that said, let companies do what companies do, let them make money, let them do, because we believe in the private enterprise, but we are stepping all over some of these things now.
So Senator Rowden ruled the amendment out of order on the second one.
Mm-hmm.
And they came back with a little bit different one. Ultimately, after a pretty long discussion, there was a vote. You had a few folks vote no, enough to kill it. You had a 14 vote yes. And to me, it broke down, and this is just my white trash view of the Senate. You had your folks that was like, okay, we're going to do this the right way. And this is how things need to be done. This is the traditions. I heard somebody say they were against the traditions of the Senate, which to me is a scary thing for anybody, especially for senators to say. You had some of your new senators that are like, oh my gosh, we don't want to catch bad comments on Facebook, so we'll just go along because, but a lot of them knew. Like I was getting texts from someone that voted yes that this is stupid.
Well, they don't want to go through what I went through last year in my reelection.
Yeah, that's true.
All this stuff come out patently untrue. But if you get most of your news off Facebook, you're going to be somebody who is poorly informed and highly agitated.
All right, let me ask you a question. We've had this discussion over a beer, over dinner. You took a lot of hits. I agree. Most of them either patently lies or there was another side to the discussion. You do nothing to defend yourselves against your colleagues that attack you. At a certain point, I think people in the rotunda even are like, I think a lot of folks are on your side, but they're like, well, if you're not going to defend you, why don't you guys defend yourselves?
I think some of us, the ones that went through that tough reelect last year, by many people that are on the other side of this fight, we just maybe we're just unprepared. We're probably, if you look at the legislative process and what we get through it, most of us are chairing committees that actually have a real responsibility. And quite frankly, last year I didn't realize this storm was brewing on Facebook until session was almost over. I just don't pay enough attention, I guess, to that side of things. I look at policy and I look at hearings, and many of us are chairs of, like Mike Bernsketter's general laws, a lot of important stuff there. Jason's got an important committee. And I just think we're busier than some of those folks.
Okay, give a little advice to one of your colleagues who's up for re-election next summer. It's clear some of their colleagues will be coming for them. The rule about senators not campaigning against each other is a tradition that's gone now.
It's gone. You see in the Senate right now why that tradition was there.
Of course.
It was a good tradition.
It was a good tradition for the state.
We didn't get involved with the other party. Now, the Senate campaign committee might have got involved with partisan fights, but individual senators didn't go against other senators, even of the other party. And that actually, in the era of term limits, everything has changed and we're blowing up everything. But for the process, that was a much better thing.
Would you give a piece of advice to just sit back and take it, or punch back?
I would say punch back, get on Facebook. All of them have campaign committees and campaign consultants. Probably make sure you have a Facebook.
I saw the scorecard, which I thought was very well done. It's a very good piece. As a person that observes politics, I thought the scorecard was excellent as far as a thing to convince people to vote how you want to vote. Now, like every scorecard, it's like I saw something about rated votes. That's like a House member cares about, oh, it's a rated vote or something. I've never seen a real senator care if some group wants to rate their vote. I do think you could take a scorecard and I could make you look the most conservative or liberal or libertarian or communist or fascist or all the ists. You could be 100 or 0 depending on how I chose to pick it. why do you think that you don't have a scorecard that shows your opponents, which are frankly not the Democrats, but your opponents being the things that are bad?
Uh, I think that truly why we don't is we're trying to rebuild the Senate. The adults are trying not to tear it down. And if we engage that fight, because
Hmm.
we did lose a member, a very good member, Senator White was a good member, uh, an expert on child abuse and guardian ad litems. We really miss his presence. But I really just think most of us are, because once you go to that reelect, you don't have any more elections. And I just don't think we have the desire to blow the place up like they do.
Hmm.
I think that might be what it is. We have a presence, people are doing stuff now, but quite frankly, this year has been working better than last year.
That's true.
I think Senator O'Loughlin's done a really good job. As floor leader, uh, I every day I thank the Lord I'm not in leadership.
Well, I tell you, there's a lot of folks thought you'd be the guy to step in and do that.
My feelings, I think I have too many hard feelings from the fight that we've had the last couple of years that I would have been a poor choice. And so Cindy's doing a good
That's
job.
rare though. People in politics. I mean, I think that you would have been a top contender for that if you'd wanted it. Very seldom do people have the opportunity to be a top contender, maybe even the favorite, and not take it.
I just didn't think I was the right person for it now. And seeing how hard Cindy's working, I think I made the right choice because it is exhausting trying to, because quite frankly, just like Kevin Engler, I mean, when you have an issue and you got two sides, if I'm Florida, I'm saying you guys go figure this out, and when you're ready, bring it to me. And I think that's what Cindy's doing. But her and Caleb are also a lot of the negotiations.
All right. Well, I'm very fortunate. I appreciate so many of you sending me stuff, old campaign stuff. I promise you, we save it all. It's either here, it's in the speakeasy, my office. I've started to put some of it out here. This is an old Wendell Bailey when he ran for governor in '92 button. So my buddy Kreider down from Christian County gave me this as a thing to keep. Uh, Jim, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I will. I'm gonna put the buttons over here, kind of by Sirpoy, where he's sitting right now. But
Was
I
that
just haven't
the
got
was
to.
that the year he drove the cab across the state?
I believe it was. It was also the year he got caught with a gun at
That's
Lambert,
that's right. I
and
remember
he said it was the best campaign that he ever had.
that.
Wendell Bailey told me the story. He ran for lieutenant governor in 2000, I think, because he was bored.
Mhm.
I really do, and I think he might have won the primary even, but he didn't win the general election. Wendell said, "I started my career when I was 27 years old, asking the good folks of Howell County to give a young man a chance, and I stand here before you today, 50 years later, telling you that experience counts." Wendell is a true Ozark storyteller and a hell of an old boy. Let's talk about what's in that budget.
Okay.
Uh, I think people that go leave Jeff City and go up to Kingdom City and go over, they see a crowded I-70. But I drive I-70 quite a bit. It is nothing like the crowd. If you get up and go to Columbia and go west, you can have a 70-mile-an-hour speed limit, but you can't drive it. You can drive about on a good day, on a good afternoon, you can drive 60, 65, right?
Okay.
At night, maybe a little more, but that's about it.
Hmm.
You're going to 3 lane, 6 lane, I guess,
Uh-huh.
all the way across the state. When you leave office, when this is done, and you look back on your time in government, man, I don't know there's anything that's going to be as impactful that you can actually point to and
I
say I
think
was a
that's
part of
true.
that than that.
I think that's true. It's going to be expensive. It's going to be painful because I drive it. I'm trying to get them to delay construction until after I'm termed out because I guess probably I'll be taking 50 highway a lot because
We
it's
need a bypass of Sedalia.
they do, and they need 4 lane past today.
Yeah.
But that's another time, I'm sure. But no, it's going to be a big deal. 6 lanes across the state is going to be a huge construction. I mean, you've driven it. You see all those bridges. They're going to have to rebuild a gazillion bridges that are just not made for 6 lanes. Going over these little
Well, I
creeks and
saw,
little
yeah,
interchanges.
Warrington, they just built
Yeah.
a whole beautiful overpass that I drove to St. Louis last week and I was looking at it. I was like, well, I don't know how you're going to fit another lane into this thing.
Yeah, we've got some over there too that were built. I'm sure at some point they said everything from now on going to, it's got to be 6 lane capable.
Yeah.
But I don't know how long ago that was. But it is a big deal, and I think we're doing it the right way. We're going to take on some bonding and use funds we have now. We've got a lot of money right now, and people are talking about our gigantic budget, and it is huge. But in 3 years, it'll be back down, and I'm just thankful we're being cautious on tax cut. We still have 3/10, I think, on income tax pending, based on growth. And so I think we've handled this money very responsibly. A lot of one-time things with one-time money.
Well, it is true. I mean, it's one of those things where you have folks that, I mean, to me, if you can cut a tax, cut it, but don't cut a tax and have to come back and raise them because you screwed up. And I think that's where you could easily get.
And in Missouri, Kansas did that. In Missouri, with Hancock, it's much more difficult. So it's really wise that we are much more cautious.
Let's talk about some politics. We put out the tip sheet,
Okay.
kind of walk through the race for governor. They're all three officially in. I tell you what, I think Mike Keogh is running the best traditional race you could run.
Mhm.
I've told you, if you have not endorsed Mike Keogh either yourself or because of a member of an association you're in, you just don't have a lot of friends, right?
Mhm.
Uh, the people that have met Mike Keogh are pretty solidly behind him. I think Bill Eichel though has ran the best new campaign. It's like the idea of going and getting endorsements, the kind of things that you traditionally
Mhm.
did when a Victor Callahan ran or somebody. That is I'm not sure that's exactly the way anymore. And I say that because I look at Chris Koster,
Mhm.
terrific candidate, came up short with all those endorsements. Mike Hugh, I think, I mean, early that's the best thing you do, but I think as far as your new school campaign, Bill Eichel has ran a tremendous new school campaign, essentially just attacking Jay Ashcroft. And I tell you, I hear a lot of people say, I think he'll bail the race.
Mhm.
And it makes sense, right? I mean, the normal track that a person goes to become governor or U.S. senator is those state senate, then they run for statewide office, and then they run uh, for one of the big three jobs.
Mhm.
Not the case here. I don't know why you would attack Jay Ashcroft as hard as you are if you weren't going to run. What do you think he does? You talk to him all the time on the floor.
We don't cover this subject much, but I was actually at a function last week. He came to my area, my district, and spoke to a Republican club. But it's a club that I belong to, so my wife Connie and I were there watching. He does a good job. I mean, he's really become a better speaker. I think the
Yeah, I
crowd.
agree with that.
I think the crowd was pretty jazzed
I think
after
Bill
he was
Eichel
there.
is a much better speaker to a crowd than he is on the Senate floor.
I agree.
I think if you hear Bill Eichel on the Senate floor, you do not hear his
No.
best ability to speak. I've seen him in front of folks. He is outstanding.
When he was speaking at that club last Thursday evening, I thought exactly that. I thought when especially when him and I engage, there's some chemistry there that
Yeah.
that he gets pretty puffed up. He didn't do any of that at that club. He really did a good job. My wife, afterwards was like, he did it. I was surprised. He did a good job, and he fired him up. And I certainly think he's going to be noticed.
Yeah, I mean, it's if this was a gimmick, right? He would run out and attack Kehoe
Hmm.
because I think in his heart of hearts he'd like to do that anyway. I don't think he's going to have to be talked into that, right?
Hmm.
But if you're running a serious race, you would attack the front runner.
Yeah,
And for people want to say it's name ID, and of course that's a lot of it. Why J. Ashcroft would lead a poll right now is because of the name ID that he inherited from his father. It's common sense. Nothing he can do about it. It's like he's a front runner, nothing he can do about it. It's, people want to say, oh, discount him for that. Well, in the real world, that's just what it is. Uh, I do think Eichel's attacks have worked. I watched the Secretary of State bail out of the Eric voting system. I believe that had a lot to do with Bill Eichel's attacks. Even if he drops out of the race, I think he laid a path for if you're Mike Keogh, what you need to do to win this race. The three of them in there, I, I, I think if I'm Jay Ashcroft, I mean, if you ran for statewide office, you do very well in Jackson County, your home county, where they know your name. Most folks don't get into the weeds of a DEI or now it's like it's almost like the LGBTQ elemental P thing. Now it's the DEI, B, D, whatever.
I never heard of B until last night.
It's just growing, right?
I know it.
But I'm sure the extremists on the other side will have a whole alphabet by the time you actually pass a bill to add in there. But Bill Eichel will run very well in St. Charles County. I mean, it would just make sense that he
Sure.
would. It's an honor to have somebody be governor from your county. You would run well in Jackson County. If I'm Jay Ashcroft, I'm thinking that's probably a honey hole for me of votes that I would probably like to go tap. I don't know that regular people vote like, I don't think they get in the weeds deep enough to get ideological. I think it's a lot of it's name ID, frankly. But I do think, there'll be some non-Ashcroft voters that he'll eat of Kehoe's. But I think I will eat probably just as many Ashcroft votes. And how big that pie is probably depends on how much money he has, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think that is probably where a lot of his votes will come from, especially. And this is just the way it works. Jay is the front runner,
Sure.
and so you attack the front runner. And so,
But see, that's what you do in a real campaign. And people are saying this isn't a
I
real
agree.
campaign.
I agree.
I think Bill Eichel is running. This is what you would do if you set the white if Miss Connie was at your kitchen table planning your campaign for somebody. Take all the names out of it, and you're Bill Eichel, you would attack Jay Ashcroft. You would do this is what you would do to win this race. I think it is hard. He would probably like to attack Mike Kehoe, but that's what you would do if this was like a gimmick, just to go get money to go bail out of the race.
It could be, and I've seen on Facebook and some of these conservative sites that he has taken a hunk of skin off of him. That's for sure.
And organized.
I initially thought that he was just going to switch to Secretary of State or something.
Sure.
I'm not sure now. Maybe he does stay in, and I think he's going to make some noise.
I'm with you. So Ashwell's front runner.
Hmm.
You think Keogh probably has the best chance to take him down, and Eichel's a bit of a wild card, right? I think it's
Hmm.
Wild Bill, right?
Hmm.
Um,
I think that's pretty accurate.
and I will say this: I think that Jay Ashcroft, it was time. There is something about having a campaign team together,
Hmm.
formed, announced. You're on those weekly calls. It's just when you're a statewide elected official, you got a lot going on, right? There's a lot of things happening. You have staff to manage. It's just that things
Hmm.
are moving quick, and you don't think about the campaign. And I think it was time for Jay Ashcroft to get the campaign, the machinations going, get his consultants going. There's a pushback in a defense that runs on autopilot for you when you're in a campaign. I think
Right.
it was time for him to launch that thing.
I think he may have done it a little bit earlier than he planned, but
I think that's right.
I think with
It was
Igel
right.
doing what he's doing, I think he decided it's time to start.
But what's going to be interesting now is so he had a heck of a quarter, coming out with $1,000,000 or something like that. Last two quarters, like this last quarter, I think he raised like $1,000,
Hmm.
and then 15,000 in his pack, and 12.5 was from Cinder Shore. That won't get it done. If you're gonna, I think Jay Ashcroft can run a traditional front runner campaign because of the advantages he has.
I agree.
But a traditional front runner campaign does not raise $1,000 in a quarter.
All right. I think they will all. I think probably Bill will be in third place on the funding. I think my lieutenant governor will be well funded, and I think Jay will have plenty of money when time comes.
But probably time to start raking some of that plenty of money in.
Yeah, I think so.
Lieutenant Governor Dean Blocker, guy you know.
I like Dean a lot.
When you just think like, what does a politician look like in your mind?
Yeah.
There's tall, handsome guy Dean Blocker with a big handshake in there, with a beautiful wife and two great kids. I mean, Dean Blocker's like what you think about when you think of a politician.
He'd be perfect for a TV show. That's for
sure. If you cast a TV show, he would be the politician in it.
Yeah, he's a good guy. A lot of people, again, these conservative sites, they give him heck. I think he tries to do a really good job over there, and he's got a lot of responsibility. People have no idea how tough it is to do some of these jobs.
And speaker this time of year, you have no, because really traditionally you fight the Senate. That's your enemy.
Yeah.
I remember there was a guy got elected when I was getting the pal around with Mark Richardson a little bit back in the day, and this guy gets elected and he's ready to fight the Democrats. He won a special or something like that. And old Mark, Mark could stand up real tall and, well, I tell you, the Democrats aren't really your enemy. It's your enemy is the Senate, and that was the old way. And that there's some truisms of that still to this day. Holly Rader may run. I think Holly Rader will be a very tough candidate to run against.
If Holly, I will stay completely out of that race because I like both of them. I think she's doing a really good job in the Senate. And I think both of them be very competent, so I will stay completely away from that race.
The speaker can raise money. Holly Rader will raise money. She will not want for money in the race.
Right.
And I tell you, when she gets fired up on that floor, she's never turned it on you, but I bet you don't want it turned on you. I mean, when she brings heat, it's hot.
She does a good job, and I think the good thing is whoever wins, I think will do a good job in the office. So
yeah, sure. Attorney General's race. It's a very interesting race to me. Bailey comes in. I'm not sure what else he could do. Right. I think a lot of the early parts of this race relies on he went after Kim Gardner, and I think regular people, right, they're not going to understand if you can't kick Kim Gardner out. Now, legally, every lawyer I've talked to said, "Oh, this is tough. There's no way to win this. It's going to be bad." Every regular person you talk to was like, "Well, good. I mean, yeah, this is common sense." I'd hate to be John Trubinsky trying to move up in his career if he doesn't rule, because while every lawyer might understand, there is not one regular person in this state that would understand. Looking at her performance, I think she's down to 2 lawyers, and I have no beef with Kim, but I mean, the fact of the matter is, it's not great, right?
She's turned the prosecutor's office into a small law firm.
the facts of the scoreboard is what it is, right? So, Will Sharp's going to come with money, big money. I mean,
out of state money, but it still spends.
It'll be, I mean, the support in the state will be negligible, but it doesn't really matter when you go to the TV station, right? I thought Andrew, big quarter, put $1 million in the bank for a guy that's never ran before. First time he's fundraised. That's what success looks like.
I've watched him give a couple of speeches too, and he does a good job.
To me, it's a real clash of, Will probably has the worst backstory of anybody that could ever run for statewide office in Missouri. I think Will Sharp's probably one of the, either him or Fury is the smartest person I know. Like the smartest person I could actually get on the phone here this afternoon, it would be Will or Fury. Might be the most brilliant dude. there is a part of it that says, well, you'd kind of like your Missouri Attorney General be picked by Missourians. Uh, Will is pretty much exclusively an out of state situation where he comes in. He can definitely do the job. He's smart as hell, but I do think there's a contrast between a guy. I mean, Andrew Bailey's a legitimate war hero. He worked for Koster in the AG's office. Will I worked for Biden in the U.S. Attorney's office. Both of those would say those aren't fair attacks, so they'll probably just cancel out. I do believe this. I do think that Will Sharp showed up at Harvard his first day thinking, I'm going to do this race one day, somewhere, whether it's home or here, new place, new home. I really do think Andrew Bailey showed up his first day of law school at Mizzou thinking if everything went great for me, if I work really hard and everything falls in line, I could maybe retire as the associate court judge in Montgomery County. And it's a very different view of the world. And I think Andrew Bailey, in a short time span, has had opportunities come to him that he's worked hard for. He's taken advantage of them, and just through a series of events has promoted up to be the attorney general. I think the governor will be all behind him. I think it's a very interesting contrast in people. And I've always been a believer in ambition. I think ambition is good because if you want to do good at this, you'll have to do good at this to move up. Generally, it is a real interesting contrast of folks who, one I think's been planning this from day one. One I think never thought this was possible until about 18 months ago, right?
I think so. I think I don't really understand sometimes in politics, like you say, ambition. I think ambition is a good thing too. But taking on somebody that's in an office that's doing a good job, I don't understand that other than just somebody saying, I want to do that same thing. Because Andrew was appointed and he wasn't elected, but I think he's doing a good job. I think he'll do a great job. It seems like an unnecessary fight, but Will's going to do what Will does, and we'll see.
So over in Jackson County, Andrew Bailey kicking Kim Gardner out amongst your Republican folks. I think even over in Kansas City, I think that's an impressive feather in his cap.
I think so too.
But I think if he doesn't, they're like, I mean, you couldn't do that.
Yeah, it is, because this is another issue that people just think you just do it, and actually, and I'm glad there's protections because I don't want a bunch of liberal. If Jeff City goes left, coming in and taking out our prosecutors because we're too tough on crime.
Well, can you imagine if they came for Flanagan down in Jasper? I mean, that would be people. If there was a liberal AG that decided to come after Tom Flanagan, we'd all be ready to throw a fit and burn the Supreme Court down.
Right.
So it is you don't think of it from the other side, but this is a dangerous precedent. I do think though Judge Wilson was very wise in selection of Torpinski. Torpinski's straight arrow. He will make them go by the book, follow the rules. At the end of the day, I'd hate to be him because you may have your lawyer friends that say, well, this doesn't legally, da da da, but every single other person you meet is going to be like, you did what?
It seems like a slam dunk if you read the headlines, what's going on in St. Louis. I'm a big believer. I fight.
It's not a slam dunk, though, legally.
I know. Yeah. Well, not legally, but I just said as far as common sense for normal people looking at with what's going on over there with the crime and the things you read about Kim. I served in the house with Kim. I knew her. I got along with her fine. Yeah, she's a nice gal. Yeah. But what's going on? I believe in local control, but there is a point. St. Louis is an enormous part of the state, and we've got to do something.
Okay, I'm gonna ask him about schools, but not yet. Secretary of State, Shane Schuler, nice guy.
I like
Shane. Is just talk about the guy that planned this race when he was, younger. Could do the job. Denny Hoskins, you're not just colleague but roommate. You'll be like I lived with him when, but if he win takes the race.
Yes.
Probably Caleb Brown, right? It seems like
I keep hearing that.
Determined to get into this race. You have to say Denny just because he's got a lot more money than Shane. Shane's got a bigger statewide network. He's done it running. It's like the first time you benefited because you saw your wife run. You were part of that campaign.
He ran in 12 statewide.
Yeah.
Shane did,
and when you run for Senate, right, it's a different ball game. There's different factors.
Yeah.
When you run statewide, it's a whole different thing.
I can't imagine running statewide.
And it's good to know, okay, it really does take all day to drive from Hannibal to St. Joseph. I mean,
you need somebody in every county. You really do. And probably Shane's got a pretty good network out
there. Then if he really puts his back into this, could absolutely be a veteran. I mean, I see there's a few interests here that probably owe him. I think he put together a campaign. If Caleb comes in, I can see Caleb putting $1 million in the bank in 6 weeks. That's a statement of there's a lot of people with deep wallets that respect the fights Caleb's taken on. And I kind of feel like if he does this and he really looks him in the eye and commits to it, he could come out to a fundraising lead that's going to be big. And everybody on Facebook will think, well, this vote, this vote, this vote. Yeah, but if you have three times the money,
But Shane, just on a level playing field, Shane certainly got a bigger base down there because Christian and Green
sure.
know him very well, and there's a lot of Republican primary voters down there.
I absolutely think Jade has a good shot,
Mhm.
but it's going to be like everybody that's been out of the state politics for a while. Where do you get that money from?
Yeah.
Who really cares who the Secretary of State is?
Yeah.
You got to find those people that do and get money from them.
Yeah.
Treasurer Vivek Malik, what a nice guy,
I don't know him well. I've met him a few times. Yes, he is a nice guy.
and Cody Smith. You know, when you meet Cody, he's really competent,
Mhm.
very professional, nice guy.
Mhm.
I'm sure could be state treasurer. I had a buddy that was state treasurer once. He told me anybody could be state treasurer. Um, but I do think that Vivek. Look, let's just talk hogs, dogs, and logs. Vivek being an Indian American is something that's proud of the state. It's one of the reasons I think Governor Parson was proud to appoint him. But you will have some folks that'll be an issue with.
Perhaps.
I think if you meet Vivek Malik, no matter what your views are, you're like, well, he's a nice guy. He's clearly intelligent, likes the job. His personality is effervescent. It brings you in. You know what I
Right.
mean? I do think he's going to have money, and the House Budget Chair should have money. I would say that race probably gets pretty nasty, but something tells me, again, if you bring three times the money to the fight, even if the other side has some nasty things to attack you on, I have always thought when at first people, oh, he'll never win. I tend to think Vivek Malik ends up winning.
He's going to. I think he's going to be well funded, but both of them, they're as a House member and with the treasurer just being appointed, they've got a big job just getting known. One thing about the treasurer, the name is difficult for us because it's something we don't see every day. But
Mhm.
once you get it, you got it. So
That's true. Okay, I'm gonna ask you about schools. I'm gonna show y'all something here. Obviously, Mike is from the city. It's okay. It's okay. So he's gonna want to screw up schools. They all do. It's a blood oath they take to Satan. We're gonna talk about schools, but we're gonna do it like not as people that hate each other. So you should watch this. If you talk about schools, maybe this is the way to go with it.
I can feel
So
the hatred building.
you have been for a long time, an advocate of. I don't even know if it's chartered. You've been an advocate of doing something different with your local school system in Lee Summit. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you've been for doing something different there.
My focus is mainly from the early days back in 11 and 12 when Kansas City was trending towards unaccreditation. St. Louis had some problems. Hickman Mills, we had a lot of districts that were trending towards unaccreditation, doing things that would get kids in those districts into better buildings. That's been my entire focus. I'm blessed with the district I actually represent as Lee Summit, Blue Springs, Green Valley, Oak Grove. They're good districts doing. If you knock on doors around my house and say, "Are you happy with the schools?" 9 out of 10 people are going to say, "Yeah." And so I've always been focusing on kids in bad buildings getting into a better building. That's been my whole goal. I don't want to blow up the system. I just know that these kids. This is an old story, but back in 11 or 12, I went to the Derek Thomas Charter School. It's been closed because it's poor performing. At the time, my granddaughter, who's now at Grinnell in college, was in second grade. And so I saw all these, it was entirely black school, a black superintendent and an assistant superintendent. And these kids I was there when the classes were changing. They were walking the hallways. They're all behaving themselves, standing in line for water. It was just like school was when I was a kid. And down the street was a traditional school that was completely different, just chaos. And I just thought to myself, if I have a kid in the Kansas City School District, I would rather have them in this building. So at least I know they're being treated well, they're behaved, and they're safe for a day versus down the street. And everybody focused on that Derek Thomas school because its performance were bad. But that's because that school's performance was based on that school's performance. The school down the street was doing even worse in standardized tests, but their numbers are hidden in the overall district so that nobody could see. You could dig down, but it's 43 clicks away on the DESE website to get that building scores. And that's what drives me crazy. I go to things and people say, close those charter schools because they're doing poorly. They never talk about the traditional school that's doing worse, and has done it for 30 years. They just focus on the charter schools.
I came to this with two things. One, a person who was probably the smartest person I know in education policy is the state's most effective charter school advocate. And I learned a lot from hearing her talk about this back before I really even cared.
Mhm.
And I learned so much. She's very articulate and incredibly well spoken. And if you can't learn something from Kate Goss's, you're just dumb. But it was part of when she was talking about, it was when you talk to Republicans, to be careful because they're like, well, it's not a village and whatever. But if you go up to parts of St. Louis, Kansas City, West Butler County, frankly, and the businesses have closed, the streets are in disrepair, there's crime everywhere. Anybody that can afford to get out's got out. Why would you think the school would be the one thing that succeeds in that area? But I mean, I guess, and her point was, it well, it's the one thing the government can do to help directly. So maybe you try
Mhm.
to make it the one thing that succeeds. But I've always felt like you go to Lee Summit, yeah. I've been to your neighborhood. Streets are pretty in good shape. There's businesses there. There's not a lot of crime. So those schools also are in that
Right.
wake. It's not as though the school created that. The school's a part of that.
No, I say often that I don't know how we get people to be teachers or cops anymore because
Yeah.
we beat the fuzz out of them, and we're asking teachers to fix the world, and that's just not possible. And so I'm of the opinion, I've actually conceded, we cannot fix some of these problems. So the kids and the parents that want to do better for their kids, I can afford to put my kids someplace else. People that can't afford, they're trapped. Let's give them some help so they can go to a different building. And maybe that makes the building they left behind a little bit worse, but do you really want your kid part of a science project to make a building better? Do you want them to get the best education they can?
Yeah, I feel you. And I always felt like you're a sincere person about this. I mean, some of your colleagues. I mean, it's the way to raise money, which is the people want to shrug their shoulders as corruption. No, that's real life politics. If you was in politics, you think the same way. There's some. But you've done this back in the day when it wasn't. There was no real political reason for it. Um, Let me pitch this back to you. Currently,
Hmm.
if we're being honest,
Hmm.
Lee Summit pays for schools in West Butler County.
Hmm.
It's essentially a heist of the formula of we heist money from people that pay exorbitant property taxes like you, and we take it to places that doesn't pay very high property taxes like where I'm from, and you pay for our schools. Is it fair? No, it's not fair. Is it the way it is? Yes. Would if you were Jason B, would you want to change it? Well, hopefully not. But I can see like Mary Elizabeth Colvin, right? I get it. I mean, Arnold probably isn't quite where at least Summit is for as far as putting in more than they get out. It's probably in there somewhere. I understand wanting to destroy that formula because it's not equitable, and you can't honestly defend it except to say there's no other way to educate these folks, and these towns would dry up and die.
Hmm.
If you do bring in the charters to a bigger extent, I do not believe that they will not raid that money until you have to redo the formula, and it will close. And maybe that's just from a certain Republican standpoint, that's just tough, right? Too
Hmm.
bad. But what do you say to folks in a small town like Dixon, Missouri? Their school goes away, their town goes away.
I don't think that will go away. We need to. I've been talking to more and more people. The foundation formula is a very complicated formula.
Hmm.
Charlie Shields was the last time they touched it.
But overall, it's
Hmm.
you help
Yeah,
us pay
that's
for our
right.
stuff. I mean,
It
I'm not,
is.
and I'm the person that's on
It
the
absolutely is.
recipient of
Yeah.
this, and you're the
Uh-huh.
donor. So it is true.
And I've told people that if we ever actually try to modify that, I'm totally for it. But if you have a $400,000 house in Lee Summit or Marshfield, Missouri, or West Butler County, you should pay about the same taxes for your schools before you expect my taxpayers to send money to Jeff City to send to you. And that's going to be the
I,
thing. Right now, the levy that they have across these districts is the disparity is just crazy. And the agricultural lands, I know it's tough to do this, but the agricultural lands, they what they pay off of is just nuts. And we need to address that before you ask these affluent areas to pay more money for your
everybody wants to
schools.
break every fight down as Republican conservative. No, it's the self interest and the best interest of your constituents,
Hmm.
which is honestly, yes, your constituents. It is in their interest. I get that. I guess the response might be tough titties, said the kitty. You have to, you gotta get that done, right? Um, the one thing I will say, I watch schools take a beating about being woke and over COVID and the mask. And no, but look, I tell folks, my son did a year in Baldwin schools. He told me he'd rather done two in Folsom. It was a miserable experience of just awfulness, and it wasn't. Look, they're very delicate people in the suburbs. They're more effeminate and kind of fragile. And my son is a German hillbilly mastodon. He does not need to be around a bunch of little shrinking violets because he'll be German. He'll take him over, dominate him, which he did. And then they whined about it like they do. Um, but we got him into a better fit for him around
Mhm.
more testosterone fueled competition environment.
That's because you have the resources to do that.
Well, I love my son. I didn't want
Yeah,
to stick him in Baldwin
I
anymore.
understand.
I mean, I got him paroled and he's doing great now. Um, But I do think if you break it down, I was told these schools are woke.
Mhm.
I didn't think Baldwin was woke. I thought it was weak, and that's what they want, right? They, St. Louis people want more people that just sit and whine all day. You deal with them all the time. They just whine constantly. They never stop whining. Um, but the fact is, I did not see. I saw some stuff that it's like when I watch TV now. I'm like, oh god, here we go. Oh, of course, the villain's going to be the evil, like the straight heterosexual Christian male. But which it is. But and again, I'm not a really easy person to offend. I was offended one time in 1985, and I really haven't been offended since. Um, but then I see how these public schools are being called woke, and where I'm like, wait a minute, I've been to a few charter schools. That is woker than anything at a public school. And I would ask you, as a person who I believe views things fairly, I don't think you could say, I don't think it's credible to say public schools are this woke, awful thing, and then say, well, these charter schools are great. No, there's no woke here. When in reality, I've seen it. There's no comparison. Well, I'll tell you. Let me find the Putnam County Midgets. Their mascot is a midget. In South Missouri, there's the Richland Rebels. Their mascot is actually a Confederate soldier. That is the mascot. If that's woke, I'll kiss your ass. I just don't see it. However, if you go to the KIPP charter school, I mean, you walk in and it's like Black Lives Matter posted. And again, I'm not saying those things are wrong or right. It's not where I'd want to send my son. But I don't think you can go to the midgets and say, oh, you woke people, and then tell the people the Black Lives Matter posters, oh, no, you're very conservative.
I think what you're saying has a lot of accuracy. I just don't. If a school is earning their students, not handed their students, I give them a lot more freedom. If parents want their kids in that situation, I'm okay with it. What I don't, I think you're right. I think the public schools are getting, especially in my area, are getting more woke. Not nearly as bad as you'll read on Facebook. I remember a year or two ago, they had cat boxes and people were using cat boxes in schools. I talked to superintendents and
Yeah, they took
principals.
bullying out of schools. In
That was
Mealyville, we'd have handled that ourselves. People
that
don't need
was
to be involved.
well, both my superintendents said, Mike, that's just not true. The health department shut us down, if nothing else. But this stuff gets spread on Facebook, and people believe it. So it's not as bad as people think. But
Yeah.
but it's actually working because in my district, we just had a school board race, and we had some people running that were upset about some of this stuff, and one of them won. A year ago, two people won. So I think almost half the school board now is people looking out for that stuff, and that's exactly how the system's supposed to work. We're not smart enough down here to make these decisions that are statewide that work
Yeah.
for everybody. The system's set up to fix it locally, and I think a lot of districts are doing that. They're moving in that direction, and I think they'll pull it back. And school used to be so easy. All you do
I
is
know.
reading, writing, and arithmetic, and now we got all this other stuff, and 2/3 of the kids are not proficient in reading or math skills.
I was at a meeting with some public school folks, and they're telling me about Diversity Day and the Columbia
Mhm.
thing, and I'm like, well, is America racist? Absolutely. Is it more racist than it used to be? Well, yes. I'm like, well, you had Diversity Day when I was in high school, and so if you're having Diversity Day today, maybe Diversity Day isn't helping.
Yeah.
Maybe the kids. I think maybe the better idea would be the more educated someone is, the less likely they are to be racist. So send the kid to math class.
Mhm.
Don't send him to diversity class. Send him to
Yeah.
math class. The smarter that kid gets, he's probably gonna not be racist. Is all.
Well, it's like Kansas City. They were going with stuff about DEI, diversity, equity, and all the things that schools do. And I was thinking, if I was a parent, my kid was in, because 2/3 of the kids in Kansas City School District are not proficient in anything. And proficient's not like a B; it's like average. And so, if I was on the school board in Kansas City, this diversity stuff would be about 41st on my list of
Yes.
things in math and reading and being in attendance and learning just the ability to deal with people and work would be way up on the list compared to what they're doing.
End of the day, I've seen people have different opinions. It stands to common sense if a kid shows up healthy and fed, they're gonna do better in school. Is that the government's job though? It's a tough call.
It's I would say in a perfect world, no, but in the real world, when
I'm
kids
not-
show up
that's right, yeah.
hungry, I mean, we're putting a lot of money to that stuff. I can't. I was shocked when I got elected and I found out that we had in some schools they're giving kids lunches all year because, I mean, to me that's a parent's fundamental responsibility. But some parents are just, I'm sure their life is tough, but they just
I go
are
back to if you're the
incapable.
judge schools on these test scores, right? Which I'm not sure. I went so my daughter. I'm gonna rat her out for a second. She has her MAP test, right? I had MAP tests when I was in school. They made it clear this doesn't count to your grade.
Uh-huh.
This has no impact on you, but we really need you to do a good job. And I'm like, Well, I operate out of self-interest. I'm like, okay. So about a half hour, I'd be reading. I'm like, then you got to go to recess. You got to go goof off. You got done early. I'm like,
Color the bubble.
and my daughter said you got to take these math tests. They're dumb. They don't matter. She's like, well, I'm just gonna get these done as fast as I can. I'm like, well, that's exactly what I would do. I just don't know that you're getting it. Whether it could be worse. Hell, I don't know. I might have made a better score just filling the bubbles in than if I read the things. I do think there's got to be a better way to do this, and I do think if you're going to judge those kids by the test, well, yeah, the school then is going to help you get fed that one day. I mean, people are going to act out of self-interest, and they're going to play the game you set up.
It's another thing. A lot of this came from No Child Left Behind, the federal policy when they passed that back during Bush's tenure. And I think we test these kids way too much. And again, I know I'm an old guy. I don't understand why it's so complex. We used to in January take the Iowa Basic Skills, and that's told you, that if you're in 8th grade, you got back a thing that said you're reading at the 12th grade level. You're kind of happy about that, but it wasn't that complicated. Now this testing is so convoluted, and they got to send them someplace. Why can't they just grade them in the building?
So break it down. Brad Pollitt has an open enrollment bill. Brad Pollitt's a serious guy. Works very hard on this. Basically, go to any public school that will take you. That will take you,
right.
What you gonna vote for that?
Yeah,
if it gets your vote,
I will, because open enrollment means a lot of different things. A lot of people think it's anybody can go anywhere. No, you're not coming to Lee Summit School District where I'm paying a high levy if you're coming from a district that's not.
That's the part that is the fact of the matter is I think, and I'm from Butler County, so I think Poplar Bluff School District, which has the highest levy, you will see people leave and go to Neelyville, and the state money will follow them. But in a lot of places, you're going to see people go from a place that's a very small levy to try to get into a bigger levy, and it is patently unfair. But I guess again, that's the system we got.
Well, under the plan of this bill, it'll work because you only have the receiving district can determine who's coming, and they can only fill an empty seat. You don't have to build buildings or hire teachers. Seems fair enough.
Yeah,
and I think probably very few districts will participate early on.
The show me state, right?
But I think in 4 or 5 years, if there's $6,000, $6,500 sitting there for a kid coming from someplace else, you get the state adequacy target or something. Some superintendents say, we could use that money. We don't have to hire teachers. We don't have to do this, don't have to do that. And maybe then the door will start to open up a little bit. This education scholarship plan we started a couple of years ago. A mom came to my office last week with her 2 sons, 6th grader and 8th grader. It was absolutely what I hoped this plan was doing. They were ecstatic about being there, both in a Catholic school with this. They were accepting that $6,800.
Where'd you send them to watch you? I was like, they got all their body parts still?
It was St. John's by me. And they're going to go to St. Michael's, which is a high school. And the money coming won't quite cover that, but they have private scholarships. It's just working. We just have to. The good thing about education is in many areas it's working, in some areas it's not. And where it's not, we can't break it. It's already broken. So let's try stuff.
So that was the one thing I never forgot. And I don't know if it was Kate or Todd Richardson said this. Schools are a state responsibility. The state decides what success and failure looks like. If we're failing, how do you not try stuff? And I really think your biggest public school proponent, where the school is failing by your own standards, how do you not experiment? How can it get worse? And that really stuck with me of, that rings right now. There's always unintended consequences, but it rings right. Let me tell you, you've been to the Courtyard by Marriott, right? They bring this show to you every week. I will break it down. I'm gonna see if we can guilt Searpoint into getting his wallet. So if you look, when you come to Jeff City, it matters, right? Senator, if you have someone that says, "Oh, meet me at the Hampton Inn," you're like, "Well, no, I'm not doing that." It's like, "Oh, meet me at the Marriott." You're like, "Oh, nice. You're gonna see everybody." There's a few places in town where you can see every single person that matters. Maybe like the Grand Cafe, the restaurant,
Coffee Zone in the morning,
the Rotunda, High Street Pub. I mean, if you're my kind of person. And then the Courtyard by Marriott lobby. So I tell folks, I'm going to give you the Hillbilly Challenge. Get on the internet. It's going to maybe cost a little more because it's better. That's why this, even though they have a branding issue, costs more than Natty Light. There's a reason for this. Sorry, McKenna. Get on if it's within $20 difference. If it's within $20 difference, book the Courtyard by Marriott. When it's better than $20 by difference, which it will be. If it's not, you come right here. I'll give you $20. You got your wallet on you? It's right there. I'll watch him do the McKenna. He has no cash on him. Oh, okay.
What do you want?
Match me. $20.
What am I doing for $20?
If somebody books at the Courtyard by Marriott and it is not worth $40 difference, you come and we're going to give them these 2 20s. However, when you do book at the Courtyard and it is worth the $20, you come and you buy me and Senator Searpoint beer. This is the 12th beer I've got this session. from people taking the Hillbilly Challenge. They've come up and bought me a Bud Light because I gave them this great advice. They go to the best hotel in town, and I'm telling you, it's where you want to be. And I'll give you a pro tip. If you're not at the Courtyard by Marriott and someone asks you where you're staying, lie. Just lie. You don't want to look JV. You don't want to be like the Capitol Plaza. They're going to laugh at you. They're probably going to cancel your meeting. Just lie. Just go sit there and have a beer and have dinner. Don't tell people you stay at the Capitol Plaza. That's a bad call. So if you can't get into the Courtyard, lie. But try to get in the court. That's where you want to be. Senator, thank you so much for this discussion. Thank you for matching. This is the Hillbilly Suburban Challenge. Now you buy us a beer after you get it. You're gonna want to buy us a beer, trust me. Or $20 to you. Just tell me you booked it. It was bad. No questions asked. I'm gonna give you the money. I'm gonna bless. Go with God. But you're not gonna do it. You're gonna buy us a beer, and I'm gonna drink it, even if it's a tranny Bud Light. So thank you all for watching. Vivek Malik, speaking up, state treasurer, 100 days on the job. Going to be on the show this week. We're going to have double Dinkins. Chris is going to be on the show, which is always fun. And she's going to bring her vagabond son with her. So we will always have a good time with Dinkins squared. Vivek Malik, and we'll probably try to find a couple Democrats that's willing to sit down and visit with us. Thank you very much for being on television on This Week in Missouri.